This show is brought to you by DF Studios Limited. Whether you're a business owner or entrepreneur, DF Studios will guide and assist you on the best ways to promote your brand digitally, in addition to creating visitor and customer generating content like blogs, social media posts, videos, and even podcasts like this one you're listening to right now. Visit dfstudiosltd.com or hit up info@dfstudiosltd.com for more info.
So welcome back to Mind Your Minds, and this is episode 4. You're doing great. So tonight we are going to touch a bit on presentation of the book, how to deal with book covers. No, I don't want to sound cliche. I'm going to be a little cheesy right now. I know a lot of people say this when they talk about this topic. You know, they say don't judge a book by its cover.
But yet we do. Yes, we do.
In this case, we really do. I just had to say it, Mick. Sorry.
It's the first impression. It's the first thing that people see with your book. So yeah, it is something that you have to get right in your genre.
Yes. So remember I told you, I don't know if you all remember from the previous episode, I felt like editing took a chunk of my budget. So I felt I sort of minge with the book cover. And so I had this idea of what I wanted the book cover to be, but I was so connected to this, like I was just so tied to this idea of what the book cover should be. I did my research, and I was like, I went on Amazon, which you all should do. And I did my research as to what book covers look like for this genre, not just for the genre, but the subgenre, because it's very important to create a cover that is fitting for your audience. So the first thing you need to know is what genre is your book, and then what subgenre, and because that way you can tell like who your audience would be, because we are selling for our audience. So if you want to create, you see, what I fail to realize is that I need to have a book cover that sells, you know, because I want to sell a book. I mean, yeah, it's all about your creativity, your opinions, but at the end of the day, I want my book to sell. And now I understand that I need to create something that will sell, you know, and the book cover needs to reflect that.
And how did you determine what would sell based on your research?
Well, now based on my research, for example, okay, I'm speaking for fiction. Nonfiction is totally different because that audience is different, right? For nonfiction, you need like a clean look, something that is very easy to read, I would say. But I mean, for fantasy, I felt as if you could be a little more creative. I mean, I would have put like one of the main protagonists on the cover and have the backdrop reflect the world. So, and obviously the main elements of the book will be there. I mean, with the title of the book, because I think for a book cover, there's mainly 5 elements you need to think about. Right? The title. So I had my title, the series or the tagline, you know, whatever your tagline would be for the book. For me, it was a trilogy. So I said a trilogy, book 1. You know, well, my name, the author name, the foreground is the 4th, meaning like, for example, if you're talking about, the lost civilization of Atlantis, I had like the ocean and the symbolic, circles, concentric circles that sort of symbolically represent the Atlantis.
Okay.
So that's your foreground. That's 4. And then like your background, you know.
The background elements.
The background elements. So like when you look at a book, and you're like, whether you're in a bookstore or you're looking at a book on Amazon, like the book cover like calls you out,
Yes, it has
you
something
know?
what I like to call thumbnail presence,
Yes.
where even if you were to look at the size of a thumbnail, a typical thumbnail on Amazon, the book cover should be able to transfer all those elements to somebody who is just scrolling by. Because
Yes.
before you want to make sure that before this person who's scrolling knows about you or your book or anything about it, when they're scrolling, it catches their eye. And once it catches their eye, that's where they'll be looking more. So definitely
Yes.
consider.
So, and I remember it's only after I remember there's this channel on YouTube called Author Level Up,
Hmm.
and he spoke about these 5 elements of a book cover. You all can research him. And again, University or YouTube pretty much give you all this information. But I was just so tied to that notion of how my book cover should have look in my mind before I wrote the book, and even budget wise, I just it helped determine, the final product of the book cover.
Hmm.
But it's okay. It was my first novel. I think going back, moving forward to the next my upcoming books, I'll know exactly, because I know exactly what to do, what to look for, because it's all a learning experience, and we'll share that on this podcast. But yeah, and so just like scrolling through Amazon, comparing other books, especially if you want to compare the bestsellers, basically you try to use the same, you know, more or less concept, because your art, and as you think too, when you decide, when you pick on your final artwork, you need to like tell a meaning.
The cover itself should tell a
Yeah.
story in itself. Even if it's not a scene from the book. Let's say a lot of people like to use scenes from the books, just like how they like to do with movies sometimes. It has to have its own meaning and premise it, so that what works, I find, is when somebody comes back to cover
Yeah.
and they see certain elements and like, oh, that's what they meant by that. And
Yes.
that's why they have that there, and that's what that's supposed to mean.
And
Those
we
are
have
always
to
my favorite
admit, I
covers.
mean, I'm sure when you go into a bookstore or you scroll through Amazon, like, I mean, the first thing we do is look at the cover, right? That like sort of like calls us out, or,
Mhm.
you know, basically tells us what the book is about, and what. So the book basically, it needs to tell you what the book is about, what genre it is about, what genre it is,
Mhm.
and whether we can identify with this
So
story. So the
it's
book cover should tell you that.
it's a interesting balance between familiarity with elements of whatever genre it is, but at the same time, there has to be some uniqueness that
Yes.
draws the eye to the cover based on that. And my recommendation to a lot of people would be, do your research just like V did, and I did as well, on Amazon. Look at the top 10, 50, see what the similarities are in that genre. If you find that your genres mix between, like, say, you're doing a romance fantasy or science fantasy like we did, pick elements from both of those genres, bridge them together, and the uniqueness will come based on what story you have to tell. And you could bring in one specific characteristic there. If you like, in V's case, she brought in the symbols, the runes. In my case, the I brought in the weaponry that was not typical of a fantasy story. So you're kind of looking at it as like, okay, I see a fantasy setting, but I'm seeing that is, I swear I'm seeing laser shooting there as well.
Yeah.
So something's going on. And when you merge that really well, you can get a lot of people looking at your cover. Now, you could actually have a situation where people are like, I didn't read the book, I didn't get the book, but if it's one thing I love your covers.
Yes.
That's one thing I always get. People are like, I friggin' love your covers. Because it's one thing I love.
Especially the second book.
Mhm.
Was the second book? I love that cover. It tells a story, so we'll know, like, it basically kind of lure you in.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I mean, in this case, you can't judge a book by its cover.
You would have to, because
Yeah.
remember, there's so many books out there, and unless you're building an audience, which you should be for anything you do, new people who do not know who you are will have to be drawn to it somehow. So
Yeah.
understand, people will judge a book by the cover first and foremost, and when they dive into it, then they become hopefully a raving fan. So
Exactly.
what would you put differently in your second book without giving too many spoilers?
So the circle armor, the concentric circle seems too abstract. I felt as if I would have um, probably gave more details to the actual concentric circle, so you can see that it's a advanced ancient civilization. I would
Hmm.
have sketched advanced Asian civilization and have my protagonist maybe in the foreground there, exhibiting a power of hers. And so the fact that I created this advanced ancient civilization, like a sketch of it on the cover, instantly I'll get those people who are into conspiracy theories, well, so-called conspiracy theories, I must say, and who is into like ancient aliens, the lost world of Atlantis. They will get it, so they will be. I mean, just seeing the book cover I will gain that audience, and then I will draw up my fantasy audience based on my protagonist when she displays this element of her power. So they know that this is about, fantasy, and I maybe may gain a third type of audience because my protagonist is female, and I might draw those, the fact that she's a lead female
Female
character.
female
I might
protagonist.
gain,
I,
yes.
yes,
Although
you.
I mean, and then maybe I would have put the other two protagonists, because it's, remember, three POVs I wrote it from,
Mhm.
and I would have had them a little like smaller next to her. So within that small frame, you get just as to what the book is about, as opposed to this world I had. I don't have a cover. Well, you all could search it online. Basically, I just have the universe and the symbolic representation of Atlantis. So it's very abstract. Like, you can, I think for a first time novel, I should have displayed more to gain that,
So,
you
so,
know,
so people who are viewing could get a
to
better
know.
idea of what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah,
Whereas,
maybe like if I had an established name before and the book was well known, I could have used that cover.
yeah, so,
But I think like I had to like tell them, I had to show them in some way what the book was about. So, and I admit it was, I could see it was, a failure on my part. But you live and you learn. But do you think I could actually change it, although I published it like a second edition or?
yes, actually, funny story. I actually had three different covers for my first Inixa book. Um,
Yeah,
the first one was very dark in color, dreary. It kind of gave the impression of only dark fantasy in it, and it did not get to see any elements. I
yeah,
then commissioned another cover similar to the scene that is shown in the first book, but then it became very cartoony. So
yeah,
that actually brought a younger audience, a young adult audience, or younger than a young adult audience to view it. And then I decided, let me take the original cover that was too dark, do some composite in it, get an actual person to do titling, because there's a difference between doing the cover and somebody doing the titling. And the person who did the titling really brought out the difference in how the title looked, how my subtitle looked, how my name looked, how my back cover looked, and what you see now. If you search up the Anixa now, the first book, The Sorcerer's Conquest, you will
Yeah.
see the final product from there. So yeah, feel very free to go ahead and change your cover as you need to, because it's a lot of growing is still happening. We're in a digital world, so you have full ability to do that and make that a second edition.
Yes, I
In
think
fact,
I'll do that.
I would actually recommend to you, if you have penned any episodes of, well, any chapters of the second book, you can now add it to the first book as a preview, and then have a link to the second book when it's ready, or your mailing list, so people could join your mailing list, and then they eagerly await when you announce the second book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's all, the thing is, we have to put ourselves out there, and this is how we learn or improve, and it's all about evolving.
yeah.
So, but I want to, so when you go on Amazon, and actually what I did was I researched not just fantasy, but sci-fantasy, because that's my subgenre, and it's important to research your subgenre, because like sci-fi fantasy will be different from pure fantasy as well as urban fantasy. Your urban fantasy, you see a little more modern day imagery, and so you really need to be specific within your niche
Mm-hmm.
to portray that subgenre. And what I did was, when I went on Amazon, this is after the fact that I actually published the book on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I actually told myself, I wonder why no one is clicking on the book, because most of the books I sold was basically driven by my active,
Follow in.
following, or me actively promoting the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, like, what is the difference? Like, why no one is just like randomly clicking? And then it occurred to me it was the book cover, because I went into the subgenre of sci fantasy, and I was just like looking at books, and I clicked on books that called me out based on the book cover, and it was then that occurred to me my book cover wasn't selling for me,
Right.
and it's good that I'm aware of that,
It's a lot to admit that, which is good. And
Yeah.
I think that if that was like the third book and you put that cover, it could have worked, because you would have had
Yes,
momentum built from an audience who would know your name. And I
exactly.
would actually say that this is a mistake that many authors, I realize, make. And I just want to say this really quickly, not to take you off point there, V. But a lot of authors who do not have a brand name yet tend to put their names bigger than a title in some cases.
Yeah,
What tends to happen when you see the thumbnail of the book, you see the author's name more so than a title. And
exactly.
the rule of thumb typically is, when you're now starting, the title element needs to be bigger, and then as you grow as an author, the author element becomes bigger. If you notice in a lot of established authors' books, the author's name becomes more apparent based on the popularity of that author.
Yeah,
Yeah. So just
you
something
very to pay attention to.
in your
Yeah,
cover design, because cover designers only go based on what they believe is working, what they believe makes sense. So they will do their research and see, they'll look at a top 20, but a lot of the top 20 could be traditional publishers, and that will be big time authors, and their author name could be big. So you might actually have a cover designer that will make your name very big based on their research. But you need to understand, if nobody knows who the hell Mikkell Khan or Verena Boodoosingh is, they're not going to buy the book if the author's name is too big. But if they're
yeah,
intrigued by the name and the look of it, they will buy it. And another thing you need to consider as an author, a new author, and this is something that I have ignored, I should not ignore it going
yeah,
forward. um, you need to pick names that can resonate with people and they understand what it means to them. So, for example, the Elixir is a very challenging name for me to sell because
Mm.
whilst intriguing, it doesn't spell out exactly what the book is or what it is about. And I'm pretty sure
Yes,
sales based on that.
I
Uh,
agree with you with that as well. I
Somebody
totally.
has already suggested to me if I had made a name like, say, Architects of the Universe or Elements of the Universe or something like that, it would have sold better.
Yeah.
But to me, it didn't sit right with me. So that was a creative stance that I took. So instead, what I did was, okay, you don't know what the Alexa is, but I'm going to put a cover that gives you a good idea of what you're getting yourself into. And I believe
Yes.
that cover saved the actual series based on that. So you have to be able to balance it and be mindful of what you're getting yourself into.
Because I mean, we can. It all depends on what your goal is. I mean, if you really want to sell a book and it's all about just letting your creative work be out there, it's all fine. But I mean, if your end goal is to sell and make your your work known to the public, I mean, you need to create a cover that sells, and that's very unique. It's very important to be mindful of that, and I am aware of that now. So, for example, if the book is, say, it's about, a urban fantasy about a witch who is going to a Catholic school and she time travels, maybe the book will have this witch with a broom and she's in a church with the background, and the foreground might have elements of like time travel, and be like, hey, this is a book interesting. It's about a witch who is in a church and she time travels, and you grab it right away.
Fun.
So
It's funny
yeah.
how you mentioned that because I'm actually thinking about how uh, author with a background like us, you know, East Asian, a
Yeah.
smaller background like that, made a book series called The School for Good and Evil or The School of Good and Evil.
Oh, really? It was? I saw that. Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
realize a South Asian person.
yeah.
Okay.
So I looked it up. I looked him up. And just from from the cover as well as the name, you know exactly where you're getting yourself into.
Yes.
So you're correct when you say the elements should show it as well as the title should show it.
Yes.
So we are two authors that seem not to listen to that good advice.
Yes.
Telling all listeners now, you should consider it. Consider another working title for your book that would get let people in the genre understand what they're getting themselves into. Once you grow your name a bit more, then you could start to use the abstract titles that, is like, well, I don't know what this means, but it's a Mikkell Khan book or it's a Verena Boodoosingh book. I'm going to check it out and figure out
Yeah.
what that is.
But in my book, so the circle armor, this is going to be a spoiler.
Mhm.
Why I called it the circle armor is because the concentric circles themselves became the armor for the city, for the advanced civilization.
Mhm.
So that's why I thought I called it the circle armor, because I was playing on the concentric circles. But I think maybe if I had played on the whole advanced ancient civilization, the Atlantis, lost Atlantis, and maybe, but I didn't want to sound too cliche, so it's okay. Like sometimes we need to go with our guts and play with it, and it's all a learning process. But my tagline, however, it did said, inspired by
Right.
Atlantis. But what I think though, when I realized when you go on Amazon, it's not as clear. So
It,
what I'll do
um,
is make sure the timeline, like it is really more apparent when you view it.
or here's a suggestion. Since you're redoing the cover, maybe you could work that into the subtitle. So you could have the circle armor colon um the Atlantic or the Atlantis conspiracy or whatever you want to put there, the Atlantis
Yeah.
origin, something of that nature that speaks
Because
to it.
I didn't the city I named, it wasn't called Atlantis, but it was based on Atlantis.
Mhm,
So, but yeah.
mhm. So you could still play into it. You could still, if it is something you want to do and still utilize to tell people, hey, this is based on the Atlantic theories, you can still bring it in.
Yes.
And that will show, even though your cover mightn't show it as well, but again, the cover design could help with that. And
Yeah, the cover, the design will. So I think moving forward for 2023, I'll, really get, and that's another problem I think that I had, and I think our authors need to be aware of. How do you convey these symbolic messages to your graphic artists? Sometimes it may be hard to explain in words, and I mean, we are not like really good. I mean, I'm not a good artist to sketch this thing out. So I think one good example is you could go in Pinterest and get concept artwork to portray similar, images of what you would want in your book. So you could say like get concept art from Pinterest to show, reflect the background, some for the foreground, what your character may look like. But yeah, so it's important for you to learn how to communicate with your graphic artist to bring out this, this concept art that tells your story.
Pinterest is actually
in
a
the cover.
good way to do it.
Yeah.
Basically, you have to be the engaged woman getting ready for a wedding. You go into Pinterest, you
Yeah.
give the idea of what you want this
That's
big
a good
to be
analogy.
like. And if it's one thing a bride wants to make sure is that her wedding goes exactly as she wants it to. And Pinterest is a very good way to do that. And I would actually suggest now, and this is going to be controversial, but that's why I like to bring up controversial stuff in this podcast. You can use as well artificial intelligence to write a description of exactly what it is you want as a image. Let the artificial intelligence create the reference that you like, because they bring up several references, and give that to your artist now to create the actual polished look you want. Right now, there's a big debate that's going on between artists who are fearful of AI and like to disband it. They don't want it to happen because they think they're going to lose their jobs. But what I just recommended there was excellent symmetry between the AI for authors who can't draw or illustrate like we can't do it. And we could visually show the artist now what we're looking for, and the artist creates a better final product based on what they know what to do and complete for us.
What is the name of that?
AI? There are tons of them now. The ones that I see are very popular.
Well, I saw this AI is popular now with on Instagram and TikTok, where you upload your photos and they just make these beautiful images of yourself.
Well, I would recommend to people be very careful with that, along with the AI that you create, because right now
they're stealing some information.
AI is not it is not protected by any copyright. So anybody could use those images that you create. So any images that you create, be mindful that even if somebody to steal it and use it in a court of law, it's the AI created it, not you. So yeah, I would recommend to everybody, in terms of AI series, you have Dawn AI, you have Wonder AI, you have Midjourney, which is very popular with artists and, funny enough, and authors. You have Jasper AI, and you have Canva. Canva has their own artificial intelligence. The only thing with the AIs is that you have to upscale the AI because the graphics they create are very small and low resolution. So if you search the internet, there are free tools that'll help you upscale it, and you can share that with your artists. But what I would recommend to everybody is, as good as the AI creates stuff, do not use it for anything like fully commercial without knowing where that art came from, because sometimes the AI pulls from commercially copyrighted artwork. So you do put yourself in a situation where the AI pulled from somebody's other style of artwork and that person comes to claim that work. Now, if you go and copy Picasso's designs, I mean, Picasso ain't coming back to do anything about it. But if you go and take some of these designs who live in Hong Kong right now, and they see that in your published work, they can come and cause a problem. They mightn't win in a court of law, but the court of public opinion could come and affect your book sales and your book reviews. So just something to be very careful with. Always at the end of the day, respect our artists, give them the opportunity to work, and AI has the role of being a servant or an assistant, not the be all end all.
Yeah.
So that's my matter.
I'm making notes too mentally. That's why I'm like,
no problem.
Digesting the information.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so there's a lot to talk about book covers, you know what I mean? And you know what I realized too is that, so you go to the bookstore, you go on Amazon, you go on any online, platform that sells book and search for a book that's in your genre, and you try to create it within similar specs, right? But then you would also, as you mentioned earlier, you also try to be a little unique about it. So it's about balancing, sticking within the rules, for lack of a better word,
tropes
of creating the book cover, but then you want to stand out as well, So
delicate balance.
It's about it is a skill that will be, and again your artists, graphic artists too. Like, what advice would you have for our audience as to how to select a graphic artist? Because we will have to get a graphic artist that is experienced, so he or she would actually help,
Mm-hmm.
Make the book stand out.
I definitely would say, from my experience, look at that graphic artist's work from before. I've actually used graphic artists from Fiverr. I've used them from Upwork. I have used graphic artists from Facebook groups that have been recommended to me. Look at their work. Look at what they've done for other clientele. Do not get afraid of their price, because their price usually means the amount of effort they're putting into your work. And keep in mind that what they're doing is actually is going to be your selling point for your book, which could be a book, your audio book. It could be the starting of a series that you create, a TV show. It could be the basis of those things. So sometimes it could be an investment that you have to look into for an artist. In terms of the artist, do not see the artist as doing everything, because I made the mistake of having my first artist also be the titler, also be the special effects for the actual finished product. And what ended up there was everything was flat. It was great artwork, but it was flat in terms of there's no depth to the illustration. There was no depth to the titling. So generally, you want to make sure you have 3 roles covered. You have the primary artist for your book cover, front and back. You will have your titleist, who will actually create the title, subtitle, author, any writing for you. And you would have your special effects polishing person, who will actually create the shadows, the highlights, the glow. If you check the Anixa trilogy, there's actually at the end, there's the book frames, there's dragons in the book frames.
Yes.
So my special effects person would have added and done those things. That made a world of difference. I know it sounds like it's a lot, and to my authors who are now starting out, don't worry about it. If you need to save up to have those roles covered for your books, great. Go ahead and save up for another edition or a new book. For now, you can start off with using certain sites like, say, Canva. There's BookBrush. There's another one that's good for nonfiction that the name escapes me, but I'll put it down in the description below, that creates preset covers for you with good titling, and all you need to do is put your background, put your title, subtitle, your name, and you can rock with that to start off. In fact, I would encourage you to do that instead of using the base covers that come with Kindle, with Apple Books and everything, because those are
100%.
they're so generic. And I've worked with a client who used that, and once we change those covers based on my advice, the sales just skyrocketed. And
Yeah.
she does romance, and she's going into erotica now. And imagine that wasn't selling because of the generic cover, but now she changed the covers. It's doing a lot better. And
Yeah.
in fact, I tested out using Canva for my short story collections of fantasy and science fiction for the Christmas edition, as well as for the first one I put out after that, and it's selling well. So it is an option that new authors could use. And the only reason I used that is because I was testing it, and it was a low production experiment. I wanted to see what could have been done with a lower production book compared to a high production book. The high production book will always sell much better, but
Yep.
that's not to say that the low production book, if you have a few of those, can't sell decently on its own. So we have options on both ends.
Exactly. But whatever your option is basically your cover is like a billboard,
Mm-hmm.
and you convey in your own little story with your artwork. And basically you're saying like what you have to do, the three W's, I would say, what the book is about, who the book is for, and like what do you say? Like where is it happening? What do you say? Like what, who, where?
I would say what, who, why.
Why? Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what the book is about, who is it for, and why should they care?
Yeah. Because why will be what your audience will identify to,
Yes.
basically. Yeah.
Mhm. Who is
And
the
so,
target, and what is the basis, the product, the book?
and then according to author level up, you speak about your 5 elements, the book title, whether it's a series or your sub tagline. That's 2. 3, your authors, well, the author's name, your name, and the foreground, where it be the character or the main subject of the book, and the background. So that's your 5 elements. And then we have to remember book cover is more or less like a real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a small lot of land there, and you really need to show, you need to use that very wisely to kind of get it sold. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
that's, I mean, we just spoke about the front cover. The back cover is like, we should start, the back cover is different.
We should say something about the
Yeah.
back cover.
So the back cover is more or less like your elevator pitch, more or less, you would say.
The back cover is definitely, the back cover would not always be like a summary of your book,
Yeah.
but it will also be like, again, it's your why. It's a continuation of the support of your why. It should be what people are going to get themselves into with this book. So
Yeah.
people like to speak about the blurb that is shown on Amazon. The blurb or the description on Amazon should not be a summary, because then you might lose people on it. It needs to be an expansion of why. So a trigger line. What is a hook that you could say, a question, a dynamic statement. It could be something explosive that people will see and want to learn and read more. A quick thing on what they can expect in the book in terms of a setup, a premise, and then maybe who this book is good for. This book is good for people who like science fantasy, who like space opera, who like epic fantasy, dark
Yeah.
things like that. And you kind of end it off there. I would also say that if you can, since your back cover could allow for it, put books that are similar or similar audiences who will like it. So this will be great for fans of XYZ, and put that in the back at the bottom. You can't do that on Amazon anymore because they've actually banned that now.
Okay.
Yeah, you cannot put fans of Star Wars and whatnot will like this. So you have to just be like fans of space opera, science fantasy, science fiction will like this.
You have to speak more of the refer to the genre or the subgenre. Yeah.
Because they found people have been trying to steal thunder from established authors based on that. So
Makes sense, yeah.
the back cover is just as important as the front, because the same way how you're going to look at the book like this, it's going to flip over and look at it on
Exactly.
one time before you decide to open that entire thing.
Because the front cover basically draws you to the book. And then be like, oh yeah, this looks pretty interesting. Let me see what it's about. And then like, oh, okay, you got the hook.
So the expansion of the why.
Yeah.
The expansion of the why is what happens there.
So we covered basically the cover, the front cover, the back cover, but I know we should probably briefly mention a bit about formatting. I know that's your expertise, so I'll leave that up to you, Mick.
Okay.
But I mean, my main question with formatting is like, what type of fonts, for example, would you use based on each genre? And if there are tools to help you with formatting your book as you write.
Oh, definitely. So I would say in terms of fonts, you want to stick with things that are easy to read. So you want to kind of avoid serif fonts with the curves, and stick to sans serif. Those are the ones without the curved ends of characters. And you can use style fonts or drop caps, as they call it, where the first letter is very, fancy and big and whatnot. You can play around with that and have a nice fancy curve and whatnot. But at the end of the day, readers want to be able to read, and they're not going to appreciate if everything is in a kind of very hard font to read, with a lot of detail, a lot of what requires a lot of comprehension, because you already want them to build this world in their head, and it's not going to help if they're trying to build the world and they're trying to decipher your story at the same time on paper. Taking that into consideration, I would say a font size that could probably work is between 12 to 14. You want to typically have around 250 to 200 words on each page that's there. That's a good size for readers to kind of follow and go along. For fiction stories, singular fiction stories under, I'd say about 300 pages, a 5x8 dimension book is good. For nonfiction and for larger books, like in terms of larger stories, maybe book sets book sets are like this. A 6x9 size would be good for people to utilize. And you could always interchange it, so don't worry. You could always just make a new edition and build it up from that. For those who are actually publishing on Amazon, be mindful that when you're doing your paperbacks and your hardcovers, you cannot change your name nor the subtitle. So you have to make sure that what you pick is what you want to go with. I know earlier we spoke about titles and changing titles. So if you do decide to change the Circle Armor's titles based on that, you might have to republish the paperback and the hardcover based on that.
Yeah.
I believe you can change the size, and the other stores are more forgiving. You can go ahead and change those characteristics up without any issue. I would say that in terms of what people could use to do the actual formatting, there are a plethora of different softwares you can use. But the one that I like is Vellum, which makes the formatting very pretty, very beautiful, and very streamlined. We actually did your Circle Armor book, and I've done mine with it. And the final printed edition tends to be very eye-catching and easy.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I could give a testimonial to that. It was, it really gives a very finished product, very professional. So these tools basically, they will align the book, the margins, everything for you.
Yes. They have their basis based on what the best practices are, and they update it all the time. But Vellum is pricey. I got it as an investment. Again, I like to speak to my authors who are now starting as well. thinking in my head, you're starting with a hope, a prayer, and a dream to
Yeah.
get this out. So you can actually utilize Microsoft Word or Pages if you're on a Mac, or even use LibreOffice, which is a free Office, Microsoft Office equivalent, or even Google Docs. And Amazon actually has conversion tools. You have that where you could put your things up there. If you're publishing wide, you want to use something like Calibre is one thing they have, and Draft to Digital actually has EPUB, an ebook publishing software on their website. Draft to Digital is the digital aggregator that you can use to put on many different stores outside Amazon. I believe they do Amazon as well, but it's always good to go directly to Amazon and go directly to Kobo. So you can consider using their promotions. But for everywhere else, it's excellent for that. So, but what I would actually say is that you're not going to get the prettiness of, like, say, Vellum, but you will get a decent looking book. And if you can, as V, you did it yourself, because remember we had a back and forth about, do you think that this is too big, too small, based on.
Yes, we did. We took a
I,
few days to determine that. Yes.
and I literally told you, here, what? Print it out on a piece of paper and then come back and ask me.
Yeah.
And then what happened is you looked at it, it's like, you're right.
Yes.
Too small.
It is too swear.
Screen
So-
is big. So it's a good practice if you're not sure about the size, what you need to have it at. Print it out natively on a piece of paper at the size it is, so 5x8, 6x9, and that is what is going to happen with your book. That's the size you're going to get. Make sure you don't pick filter page, because then you're going to be off. So make sure it's either 5x8 or 6x9 you're printing, and you can determine how it's looking like. Do it for a few pages, and then you can determine how you want to go with it.
So well, basically, you could also hire someone to do this for you if it seems like out of your expertise, because I did that with, I actually asked Mick and his company to take over this part of the publishing the books on Amazon. So that's also an option, because I did find, is it the Vellum?
Vellum, yes.
Vellum was a bit pricey for me. And I just think, at that point with the editing and everything, I was just like, listen, I need to hire somebody to do this part for me, because I was overwhelmed, I was tired, I was exhausted. And so that's also an option. You can also...
Yeah, because that's what I initially did. Before, when I now started, and I knew nothing about Vellum or the other things, somebody who actually did Vellum formatting was recommended to me. And I went to that person. They did it, very good price, very similar to what I charge. And then when I realized, the only reason I purchased Vellum, because I kept on going back to her all the time for certain changes, because I wanted to add things and I wanted to do certain things based on that. And my entire author experience was changing like all the time, because I was now figuring this thing out.
Yeah.
But then I also wanted the freedom to be able to publish as I wanted. And I don't want to bother this person all the time. And I don't know what this person's workflow is like.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided, hey, let me get my copy of Vellum so I could do this on my own. Not everybody could make that jump for themselves. So go ahead and hire somebody. But if you find you're somebody who has reached their 6 and 7 book and you want to venture into it, then I would encourage you to get your own copy of Vellum, or get your own copy of, there's another one that is being made by Kindle Tripreneur. I cannot remember the name of it for life of me right now. Let me actually do a quick Google. Atticus.
Okay.
Atticus is one that's being created right now by the owner of Kindle Tripreneur, and it is web-based, and it can be used on any platform, not just Mac. The only problem with this right now is because it's in development, it's full of bugs and it's not to the level of, like, say, a solid program like Vellum is right now.
Okay.
Some people might stand by it just for the fact it's not Mac only or Mac exclusive. But I have understood that people who use both still decide, hey, what? Let me do my work in a ProWord processor, and then let me bring it across the Vellum to finalize.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But those are the options that people could have with their formatting.
So I think we pretty much covered most of what should be said about, the presentation of your book. Book covers, the front and back cover, and formatting. I don't know if anything else you want to say or.
Well, anything else that we would probably get back into will be promotional.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking book trailer. I'm thinking what you post on like TikTok, the reels, 3D versions of your book. All those things are things I'm very passionate about, things I love to do. But they are definitely a different topic because they fall under presentation of a kind, but it's presentation more of the product.
Yeah.
And what we spoke about was the presentation of the actual book when people get in their hands. So definitely something to talk about for another episode.
Yeah, that might need a few episodes. Just yeah.
Oh yeah, marketing and promotion, everything will definitely need some episodes. V, I know you can speak on it on the part of like, live publicity, actual public relations, because I know you had a very successful book launch that was on your own, which I
Yes.
think that everybody in your podcast would love to hear about. And we could say it from the side of a digital production, of digital launch as well, which work hand in hand.
Yeah, so we can definitely, segment it like that moving forward. So I think this was pretty good, and I hope you all got the info you needed with regards to book covers and formatting. And if you need any more questions to be answered, feel free to leave your comments, suggestions, and we are learning too. So if you need to correct us on anything, feel free to leave those comments.
Constructive criticism is always key.
Yes.
Constructive, though. If you want to step out your whole self and come with something out of timing, we could be out of timing with our response to that as well, but we won't.
Yeah.
We won't. But constructive criticism will be excellent. V, as always, it's been a pleasure.
It's been.
To our listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of Mind Your Mind. Tune in for a lot more, knowledge, education, and experiences based on this wonderful world of authorship.
Real life experience,
Feel free to reach in. Real life experiences, real time. And until next time, guys, you guys take care and have a great day. Bye.